Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Lady Gwyn and Friends. This is our bi monthly live stream series where I, Lady Gwyn, am joined by friends from the fandom to discuss their favorite Song of Ice and Fire chapters. This series is brought to you by the patrons of Radio Westeros who support our work with regular episodes as well as bonus content, which is exactly what this is. And if you are interested in becoming a patron, you can find us at patreon.com/Radio Westeros, where you'll find a lot more content and info, and that'll be on your screen and in the show notes too. So thanks to all of you patrons and also to all of you who are watching now live or in the future, whether it's the video or the audio version, which will come out in a couple days. We appreciate you spending time with us. Thank you so much. So now, without any further ado, let us welcome our guest for this installment. It's Egg.
Hey everyone. Hey Lady Gwen.
Hi. Hello.
I'm happy to be your friend today.
I'm happy that you're my friend. Thank you. Egg has been a friend of Radio Westeros for years. He's a moderator in our Discord and here on YouTube as well. For anyone who doesn't know this, he was our main provider for graphics and screen caps during House of the Dragon, which is kind of intense. So yes, thank you for that. And these days you can be found as the co-host of Sanri Scribbles.
Yeah. So Sanrixian has her Twitch stream over at twitch.tv/Sanrixian. And we stream every Wednesday and Sunday. On Wednesdays, we do our Patreon raffle. So everyone that's a Patreon there gets a free, well, I guess not free because you're a member, but you get a commission from Sanri once a season or once a year, pretty much. And on Sundays, we do more themed days. Sanrixian draws or paints the picture of the day, either the raffle or the theme, which was TWOW for the last few months. We had Lady Gwen on 2 months ago, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Cover Mercy.
Yep.
And we've been slogging that out on Sundays.
Nice. Yes.
It was going to be a 2-month series, maybe 3, but we're in May. We're out of May almost.
Yeah. Well, lots to talk about and lots to do art for. And so if you don't know Sanrixian, definitely check her out.
She's the best.
Lots of great Song of Ice and Fire art. And speaking of which, I'll mention this at the end of the stream too, but since we're talking about it, she'll be my guest for the next LG and Friends, which will be in July. So
yeah, you got all 3 of us in a row, actually. Emily was your last one. Yeah. I like it. Lady Gwen,
we're good friends. So I want to give a quick reminder here about, before we move forward, that we are Spoilers All Books. Most of you who listen to us regularly know that. That includes Winds of Winter sample chapters, which I think we might mention at least once today. So
I think so.
And also in general for book-related content, which this is, we consider only the books in the word of the author as canon. We try very hard not to mix show and book canon because most of you know those diverge quite a bit.
So, we wouldn't have this chapter if we were going to go there.
Exactly. Very good point. The divergence is real, and this chapter or these characters just don't exist in the show. So there'll be no show chat today. So speaking of which, we have not introduced a chapter. I like to let the guests do that, so let's hear it from you.
Oh, yep. We're going to do the Griffin Reborn. That is Jon Connington's 2nd chapter. Kind of 4th if you include the Tyrion ones. We've got, I think 4th, 5th, 4th.
Yeah.
In this one, he is just retaking Griffin's Roost by guile, kind of, which is what he's going to get back to at the end of the chapter. But we really could have chosen, I think, any of Griff's chapters any of the four that he's in, because I really just wanted to talk about Griff. I want to stay on brand. We're gonna be we're gonna be on that planky boat. Talk about all things Lemoore. Let's do that.
Yeah.
Is one of my favorites. I love all the new kids that start in Feast, and we get POVs after the first trio of books. It's definitely the most interesting to me.
I'm just looking at the chat for a sec. Sorry.
Hi, chat.
Yes, Hello, chat, and hello to everyone who is joining us there. I wanted to shout out a Griffin with no context right now. You'll get context.
A Griffin.
I want to just
Who's
shouting
that? Somebody's shouting it from the trees.
I don't know why. It's just one of my favorite parts of the chapter. So, all right. So speaking of this chapter, so we can get into it. Let's do the thing that I try to do, or I'd like to do in these live streams when we're covering just a chapter, sort of all by itself. I like to give it context. So, how does it relate to the main narrative? So this chapter, like you said, it's Jon Connington's second point of view chapter in Dance with Dragons. It is the 61st chapter of Dance with Dragons. It spans around 2 weeks, and it falls in between the spurned suitor, in which Quentyn Martell must decide what to do next after being rejected by Daenerys, and the sacrifice, in which a captive Asha Greyjoy is unexpectedly reunited with someone from her past. That is her brother.
It's not foreboding, is it?
No, the title just a tiny bit. This is
the two they're sandwiched between.
And it's interesting too when we get to the part where I talk about where this falls on the timeline too, because timeline where it sits in the book is not necessarily where it sits on the timeline. The whole reason Jon Connington has a point of view now, is because Tyrion's arc diverged from the fun gang on the Shy Maid. He went further east, and so George had to maintain a point of view on the Aegon storyline, as well as provide very critical backstory that we've all been trying to figure out up to that point. So it's very important to this thread of the story that Jon Connington gets this chapter, or these chapters. Speaking of Tyrion, by the time our Griffin is reborn, Tyrion has arrived in Slaver's Bay along with his abductor Jorah Mormont, where they'll both soon be sold to Yazan to be used as entertainment in Meereen's newly reopened fighting pits. And if the fighting pits have been reopened, that will happen when Dany marries his Darzo Lorak, which will be, I think, very shortly in the timeline in her arc. Quentyn, as we said, is mulling his next steps after having his proposal rejected. So his chapter does sort of fall kind of close to where this one is on the timeline. You've got Barristan Selmy out there as well, but he's yet to gain his point of view because Dany's still there. Makoro is been fished out of the sea by Victarion Greyjoy when they're doing their thing out there in Slaver's Bay. Back in King's Landing, Cersei endures her walk of shame while the new regent Kevin Lannister tries to keep it all together. Lord Varys has other ideas. In the Riverlands, we've just totally lost track of Jaime. He's been gone for 2 whole months at this point. While in the north, Asha Greyjoy is our eyes on Stannis, and this is where timeline and location in the book do diverge quite a bit. The Asha timeline, Asha is still ages, days from arriving in that Crofters village where Stannis and company are going to get snowed in. So you've got that. You got Theon still at Winterfell as Reek, giving us our point of view into what's going on there. Mysterious deaths are mounting. And then north of at the wall, you got Jon Snow meeting with the Iron Bank, welcoming Selyse Baratheon with all his heart. He's so excited to have her there. But also Alice Karstark arrives. And speaking of Bravos, because I was, right? Bravo, C banker. Yes. Arya becomes the ugly little girl as part of her training with the Faceless Men, while down in Dorne, Marcella has lost an ear and Doran receives a letter. Arianne will soon be sent north with his reply. And finally, we got two point of view characters whose arcs have been fully surpassed by this chapter on the timeline. Both Aeron Greyjoy and Sansa Stark have Winds of Winter sample chapters, and both of those chapters likely take place many weeks before this one. So we truly have no idea what's happening with those two characters at this point. So yeah, so that's it. That's where we
Something.
are. It's where everything that's going on in all the parts of Westeros and Essos that we care about as this chapter begins. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a quick run through of the chapter before we drill down to focus on some more specific topics and themes. This chapter has some really good themes to dive deep into. So let's start with a rundown. We'll just pass this back and forth. Start with the start. It begins with the taking of Griffin's Roost, which is Jon Connington's ancestral home. It's been officially in the hands of his cousins since his exile during Robert's Rebellion. And it starts with archers, and we get this lengthy description about the Golden Company's archers, which is followed by his opinion of the various types of archers and their value. The description of the castle itself makes it sound fairly defensible, but with his cousin Red Ronnet away in the Riverlands, it did prove to be too lightly defended. Jon Connington lost 4 men, and where he had expected to lose as many as 100 assaulting these walls that he knew so well. So they didn't really do a very good job defending the place. And this is where my favorite part comes in right at the beginning. As Jon Connington assaults Griffin's Roost, he and the Golden Company are shouting, a griffin, which is the ancestral ancient battle cry of House Connington. And he thinks to himself, boy, that must have really confused the defenders.
Which way?
Like, what's happening? Yeah. So,
then,
anyways, yeah. So what happens next? They get inside.
Once inside, we have a front row seat to Jon's memories as he enters his ancestral home for the first time in decades. While he excuses himself to pay his respects to his father, he instead heads right to the and tallest tower, which he remembered climbing many times with his father, the domains. And one time, only once, with Rhaegar Targaryen. The prince was returning to King's Landing from Dorne, stopped to visit his friend where he lingered for a fortnight. Given the description of them being boys when it happened, it's possible the trip to Dorne was related to the betrothal to Elia Martell. Rhaegar played his harp at the feast, and the quote is, "At the welcoming feast, the prince had taken up his silver-stringed harp and played for them. A song of love and doom," Jon Connington recalled, "and every woman in the hall was weeping when he put down the harp." And I put just a little comment next to this. Right after that, it says, out of italics, "but not the men, of course, particularly not his own father." I think this is not the start, but this is part of Jon being hyper vigilant about his own masculinity, even way back. I think Jon's hiding of his true self is going to be something that comes up a lot more here in this chapter.
Yeah, that's a good call. Yeah. I wondered about the song. Do you think it's Jenny's song? Because a lot of people think that Rhaegar sang Jenny's song at the Attorney Harrenhal.
Isn't it always Jenny's song?
I think it always is. The Dragon Prince.
I think he only knows one song.
It made the wolf maid sniffle. So I think if the girls are crying, it's probably Jenny's song.
Jenny's. But I also think that he was quite a sad boy. So wouldn't he mostly sing sad songs?
Probably. Maybe he had more than one sad song.
Maybe he had happy songs.
Yeah. Did he have a single happy song?
No.
Usually
one hit wonder Rhaegar, Jenny's song.
The girls are always crying. And he's thinking about Rhaegar. He thinks about Rhaegar and his father and the lands that he inherited from his father and that lost. And we see John's real anguish over his past failures really take center stage. He thinks, I rose too high, loved too hard, dared too much. I tried to grasp a star, overreached and fell. The tragedy of Jon Connington, right there in those words. I think he blames only himself for his failures. He's not the kind of person that is going to point fingers at other people. And of course, the most notable of those failures is the battle at Stony Sept, also known as the Battle of the Bells, the outcome of which cost him his lands and titles. And we get his full memory of the exile and and consequences, as well as the battle itself. Um, like I said, no one's blamed other than himself. He thinks the fault was his, and the bitter pill of his failures is the flog that he's been beating himself with all these years. And we'll talk a lot more about this later on when we drill down. So, what else?
I think as John muses about the Stony Sept and everything he did there to find the rebel lord Robert Baratheon, who was being hidden by the townsfolk. He remembers a conversation with his mentor in the Golden Company, Miles Tulin. Connington was complaining that he had done everything as Tywin Lannister would have done. But Tulin was quick to point out that he was wrong. Lord Tywin would have barred the gates of the town and burned every living creature within, after which he, presumably according to Tulin, would have accepted the surrender of the Starks and Tullys and moved on, rebellion finished. This speculation, whether correct or not, provided Connington with a new failure with which to flog himself: the eventual death of his friend Rhaegar Targaryen. He thinks, I wanted the glory of slaying Robert in single combat, and I did not want the name of Butcher, so Robert escaped me and cut down Rhaegar on the trident. And then says out loud, I failed the father, but I will not fail the son.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Yeah, so Connington's motivations for being the boy's caregiver and military champion are made explicit, and we'll talk more about the Bells and his relationship with Rhaegar shortly.
Yes, we will. So, up next, he's addresses the household, the conquered Griffins, if you will, because it does include Red Ronet's younger siblings and his bastard son. Some of the servants and men-at-arms are people he recalled from his own youth. They don't really seem that excited to see him again, but they accept him and bend their knees readily enough. But these cousins are defiant, and Ronet's son says his father's going to kill him, so he just sends them back to their tower cells and goes off to find Halden Halfmaester, who's taken over the Maester's tower, where he's examining parchments and maps that have accumulated there. By the way, the Maester of the castle was thrown out of said tower by one of the
do we know who that
officers.
was? Is this a known Maester?
I don't think it was a known Maester, but
think so.
We know who threw him out, and although I can't remember at the moment, but it says who threw him out. And it's kind of funny because just Jon Connington says they keep trying to send ravens, and Jon Connington says no more ravens, and then it just says the next thing to come out of the Maester's tower was the Maester.
Just imagine him trying to throw one more just in defiance, and he's like, all right, you're going out.
And then whatever it was, I think it's Franklin Flowers. Yeah,
that sounds right.
Storms up there and tosses him out the window. So there is no Maester, but he left behind a lot of paperwork, and what all these parchments and maps and letters tell him is what's happening all over the realm. So it's the news basically. So they find out sort of what's going on at Storm's End. Stannis had left a small force there, but the and they were being besieged once again by Mace Tyrell, but he took off because his daughter had been arrested in King's Landing. So he's just left a small, token force keeping Stannis' men inside the castle. they kind of get the lowdown on what's going on between the Lannisters and the Tyrells. They know that Stannis is off in the north somewhere, nowhere near Storm's End. And curiously, no one's ever heard of no one's says anything about the Vale, which
Right.
is in line with what I was saying. That the Vale storyline has actually progressed deep into Winds of Winter territory, so we don't know what's going on in the Vale.
And
But
George
apparently
doesn't
he's
want to
being
tell
told
us
to.
in this chapter.
He's not about to
Right.
tell us now. So, right? He's like, I gave you one chapter.
You've got
But,
plenty.
I think it's probably intentional that nobody knows what's going on in the Vale. Not just by George, but by the fictional people. I'm pretty sure Littlefinger is trying to keep things pretty quiet. Whatever he's got going on over there. And then they pay some special attention to Dorne. And why don't you tell us about that? Because Dorne becomes very important now.
Gotcha. So Dorne gets special attention, and we see where his plans have gone. While he speaks about friends in the Stormlands and lords who are likely to join their cause, not to mention their famous friends in the Reach, mentioned by Laswell Peake in Connington's previous chapter, Dorne's support is critical to Aegon's cause. Howden states the curious fact that Dorne has an army in the Boneway and another in the Prince's Pass just waiting, though no one seems to know what they're waiting for. Connington orders that a letter be sent to Prince Doran informing him that his nephew lives. When Howden mentions offering marriage alliances to gain more allies, Connington, unwilling to give up hope of adding dragons to their cause, declares that Daenerys Targaryen may yet come home one day. Aegon must be free to marry her. Follow up that perhaps the king's hand, Connington himself, might take a wife is met with icy refusal, but not for reasons one might think. From his inner thoughts we get, death is creeping up my arm. No man must ever know, nor any wife.
Death is creeping up his arm. I don't know at this point. Had we had any hint that he had been infected, or is this the first we hear?
I believe it was revealed at the end of the last chapter.
Okay, yeah, he mentions it in The Lost Lord. Okay.
I believe it's the final reveal.
Some his fingernail is black or something.
I think so.
Well, he goes back to his chamber and he, yes, he's hiding. He's got grayscale, and he's hiding it because it says, queer as it seemed, men who would cheerfully face battle and risk death to rescue a companion would abandon that same companion in a heartbeat if he were known to have grayscale. So it's the scariest of scary communicable diseases in Westeros, and nobody wants to have anything to do with someone who has grayscale. So he's trying to manage this in his own way, which we'll talk about a lot later. Coming up, the next day they've got a war council. They find out where all the rest of the Golden Company are. Well, I guess we already knew that they had mentioned that they had taken a couple other castles. They took Rainhouse, seat of House Wild, and Crow's Nest, the seat of House Morgan. And then they find out that one of their missing ships had landed on Estermont, and now they have Estermont as well. So they have 4 Stormlands castles. None of them are really strategically important. And that's when he reveals his plans. He says, let King's Landing think this is no more than an exile lord coming home with some hired swords to reclaim his birthright. An old familiar story, that. I'll even write to King Tommen stating as much and asking for a pardon and the restoration of my lands and titles. That will give them something to chew over for a while, and while they dither, we'll send out word secretly to likely friends in the Stormlands in the Reach and Dorne. And next thing he reveals is what the big prize is. What's the big prize?
Connington, he knows one thing for certain. Only the Prince of Dorne had the power to defy House Lannister and its allies. Above all else, they must have Doran Martell. And so he reveals his plan to prove their strength as an ally to Doran. I mean to take Storm's End, a nigh impregnable stronghold, excuse me again, and Stannis Baratheon's last foothold in the south. Once taken, it will give us a secure fastness to which we may retreat at need, and winning it will prove our strength. So we've got like everything by Guile with this guy. His message to King's Landing, his taking of Griffin's Roost, and now his venture to Storm's End.
All by Guile.
All by
By
Guile.
Guile, by golly. So the plan is to ride on the 11th day, and a couple of days later, Prince Aegon arrives with his new Kingsguard, newly minted Kingsguard, Sir Raleigh Duckfield.
Duck and egg.
Duck and egg. I mean, also got Septa Lemore, so the return of Septa Lemore to our pages and to our airwaves.
Oh, yeah.
Connington thinks, though, Prince Aegon Targaryen is not near as biddable as the boy young Griff had been, and to be honest, was he really that biddable? I don't know, but maybe he was with
Cranky
Griff.
boy.
But he was pretty irritable with Tyrion.
Yeah.
We do get a couple hints that he's living up to his supposed heritage. His selection of Raleigh Duckworth as the Kingsguard was justified by his statement, "Duck will die for me if need be. That's all I require from my Kingsguard," which is highly reminiscent of Alyssa Valerian's words prior to the War of the White Cloaks, which chose the Kingsguard for her son Jaehaerys, who was right about Griff's age, maybe a little bit younger. Where she said all she wanted for his Kingsguard was true, honest men whose loyalty and courage is unquestioned. And of course, several of Jaehaerys' Kingsguard wound up being hedge knights and commoners. It wasn't at all what Jon Connington thinks a Kingsguard should be, which is, sons of the nobility. So, and then Jon Connington himself draws another comparison to Targaryens with the words that he'd already remembered earlier in this chapter, Rhaegar telling him, "Your father's lands are beautiful," and young Griff, or Aegon, says, "Lord Connington, I like your castle." So he thinks that makes him think about Rhaegar again, and he thinks his silvery hair was blowing in the wind, and his eyes were deep purple, darker than this boy. And I have a little sidebar here about dark purple eyes, because dark purple occurs pretty rarely. A lot of the Targaryens are noted to have, violet or amethyst colored eyes, but a select few have got dark purple eyes. Rhaegar, obviously, whose eyes were dark indigo. Egg, whose eyes are noted to be deep and dark and purple. And a dark purple that is so dark it seems to be black. And one other character has eyes that are said to be so dark they might be interpreted as black, and that is
It's Griff.
It's
Jon. It's the real one.
It's the real Rhaegar son. So
they're gray, which, I mean,
yeah,
you could call like a light purple looking. You could see that as almost gray.
Gray.
And then they're saying that his are so gray, dark gray, that they're almost black, or they look black in certain lights. So lots of these little parallels.
Yeah, lots of people think that. And as you also pointed out that Daemon Blackfire II, who's the center of the second Blackfire rebellion in the Mystery Knight, has also got dark eyes, which Dunk thinks are Egg's eyes. So, anyways.
Yeah, and washes the dye out of his hair to declare his dragonness, to declare himself as Daemon to Blackfire. Right.
Which is an interesting parallel to this young man. Because might be just a little hint as to who he is. Aegon, we won't ever call him fake Aegon, because we have to assume that his name is actually Aegon. So he is Aegon, whether he's Rhaegar's
We
son
don't use
or
the
not.
F word here.
No, we don't use that word here. But he definitely starts asserting himself quite a bit more as soon as he arrives. He says, tells Connington that he's been talking with the homeless Harry Strickland and found out about the attack on Storm's End, which makes Jon Connington extremely angry. And because he knows that homeless Harry would have tried to persuade Aegon to order the attack delayed. And Aegon says, yes, he did actually, but I won't. Harry's an old maid, isn't he? You have the right of it, my lord. I want the attack to go ahead. And then drops the bomb with one change. I mean, to lead it. So, and that's the end of the chapter. So that's the last, because we don't have any sample chapters for these characters, but we do have a sample chapter for Arianne Martell, and we know that actually we have two, and in one of them she arrives in the Stormlands, and these folks are all at Storm's End. So,
mission accomplished.
Yeah, so we know that they did it. We just don't know the details. So let's dive into our outline of discussion points here. We got rebellion backstory. I think this is really important to the A Song of Ice and Fire narrative. Maybe not specifically to Aegon's, like what's going on down here in the Stormlands, in A Dance with Dragons, and Winds of Winter. But, the Robert's Rebellion is a narrative that underpins A Song of Ice and Fire, and it's mentioned a lot. So we get, the full memory of the battle, which we've heard described from other points of view, and I think this is interesting. Harwin tells it from a Stark perspective. Jaime in the bathhouse scene at Harrenhal describes it. Neither one of them were first-hand accounts, so now we get this first-hand account of the battle at Stony Sept. And I think maybe one of the key things here is that this is a failure that has haunted him and has really driven all of his motivation, really, for helping this child, for going into hiding to help raise this boy and bring him back to Westeros. He says, I wanted the glory of slaying Robert in single combat, and I did not want the name of Butcher, so Robert escaped me and cut down Rhaegar on the trident, which that is the thing. That's the thing that really really bothers him. So I'd call that, maybe an inciting incident for Jon Connington. But let's talk about Rhaegar, or unless you have anything about Stony Sept that you wish to add.
No, I mean, I think we're getting to bells with him, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean,
forward.
So
with King's Landing.
Yeah, exactly. So he's got. Actually, there's interesting. Let's back up for a second, because it's interesting when he talks about, or he thinks about, sort of like the post-mortem of the battle, and he's thinking, to that Tywin Lannister. He tells his old friend from the Golden Company, Miles Toyne, Tywin Lannister himself couldn't have done more. And Miles Toyne says, no, this is where you're wrong. Tywin Lannister wouldn't have bothered going house to house searching for Robert, asking people where Robert was, threatening people. He would have burned the whole town and every single living creature, soul within it, gone in when the fire went out, found Robert's bones, and that would have been the end of the rebellion, basically. So that's fair. I mean, right, Mr.
That's right on track with what he's done to Castamere.
Yep, Mr. Reigns of Castamere, and
the
down with Darklands.
And the Reigns.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
yeah, he definitely would have burned it all down. And so when Jon finds himself in that situation again, is he going to, if he finds himself in that situation, is he going to burn it all down? I think, I think so. I think he's traumatized by bells. I know we don't really talk about show stuff, but I know a big fan criticism is that leaving this character out may have left Daenerys with some of the blame in King's Landing. That it feels like it has to go to Jon, right? Jon Connington.
They probably rolled some of his storyline into hers.
We've got a man traumatized by bells that is maybe forecasted to be the Hand in King's Landing. He knows about these caches of wildfire, right?
I mean,
maybe.
I would assume so. He was the Hand of the King during the rebellion. Briefly, but one would.
He was that Hand of the King.
Yeah, I guess. It's probable that he knows about that, and he's spent 17 years or however long wishing that he had burned a town to the ground to kill his enemy. So what might he do when he finds himself
burn a town to the ground
again? He could very much so. So that could be part of the tragedy of Jon Connington, but I don't think that's the full tragedy of Jon Connington. So.
No, let's get to Rhaegar for the full tragedy of Jon Connington.
So much more. Oh my God, we have every bullet point is tragic. So, Rhaegar is another tragic part of Jon's backstory, because we see very clearly in his thoughts that he has very strong feelings for Rhaegar. He thinks of him as my silver prince, and he's devastated that he couldn't save his life. He regrets that Rhaegar only visited him at his home just that one time, and the regret is accented with an exclamation point in parentheses. So that means we're supposed to really know that he means
once.
it. Only one. We'll just say right up front, for anyone that isn't aware of this, there's a lot of people talk about whether Jon Connington might be a gay character, but George has confirmed way back in 2011, which was 14 years ago. He confirmed to a gay fan who asked him at a Dance with Dragons signing that yes, indeed, this point of view character is a gay character, and that exchange is actually, the transcript of it is found at the Song of Ice and Fire University on Tumblr, and it's a really sweet interaction. So I encourage you to go look for that. The fan was very, very happy to have representation, and he thanked George for that. And George went on to talk about, kind of a lot of different things after that. But yeah, so that's confirmed. And now we have, is Rhaegar the object of his unrequited love? And does he admit that to himself?
Definitely,
Does he
right?
admit it to Rhaegar?
It seems a little bit like he doesn't admit it to himself, just because we're in his head and we don't we
Lost
something that.
No, you're back.
Oh no, are we back?
Well, I couldn't hear you, but that might have just been me. Chat, are we good?
Help, chat. That's okay. Chat? If they watch Sanri Scribbles, they know that I'm used to this.
Okay. Okay, so we're talking about Rhaegar and Jon.
Where are
Yoke
we?
says we couldn't hear him, but now we're good. So,
Oh, we're
yep,
good.
we're good now.
All right,
Yep.
I lost myself.
Lost in regard.
We've got. I think I don't think Jon has really admitted it to himself, because it seems like there's plenty of places where he's purposefully not admitting it. Like when he's talking about Rhaegar's song, his sweet song, and how all the women cried, but none of the men, and especially not his father. But he didn't say he all the men, so he didn't cry. And I think he's maybe saying that specifically about himself, even though the song did touch him.
Mhm.
I think also, again, when he says "love too hard" was like a place he's slipping there.
Mhm.
I think uh, it's desire. I don't know if it's love, because not it's not returned, and
Mhm.
it's not something that they were in together. It's like he desired him, and now it's almost like an excuse to keep going, because
Mhm.
he never said it was that he was in love with this guy. It was
Mhm.
duty. Like it was friendship too. And
Right.
like those things he's now pushing onto his son. These are transferable things that a friend could then move on to be like, yeah, well, now it's time that I do that for his son, for his heir. But
Mhm.
I think like the big tragedy of that is that we're going to get to the end of it, and even if he was successful, he's missing the part that mattered to him, that he wouldn't be honest about
Mm.
mattering to him.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
I
just
think
one of his tragedies
yeah,
here.
he has so many tragedies. I think you're right that he's, it in his mind probably it's more, he would probably tell himself that this is duty or friendship or, devotion to his prince, his silver prince. But there's this other aspect, there's also, love between men, especially men in the military, that brotherly love sort of thing is a real thing. But you had some interesting perspective about that. I think the military piece reminds me of some of the things we were talking about,
Right.
with what
Uh,
George's experience might be, if you want to touch on that
well, I think,
here.
yeah, because George is pretty criticized for um, lack of diversity, and I think in a warranted way, for sure. Uh, but I think like this is a almost expected of a straight male writer, that he might have just not known how to write somebody else,
Mm,
and maybe not wanted to offend. And I think it's not really any, not here excusing that, but I think he went to like his closest peers with the gay man that he put in his point of view characters. I think he went to the men that were uh, in a similar human heart in conflict during the Vietnam War, when he was a conscientious objector himself. I think the gay men, they were considered to have a disqualifying condition, and so that they weren't supposed to be in the military. So if you're drafted in that time and you're either disclosing or not disclosing, you have to lie about yourself to go into the military. And I think there's the men of that same time, like they were also exiled from their homes. They're slandered after exile, which makes it hard for them to ever go home again. And then they're forced to hide who they were in the military, like I was just saying about the disqualifying condition. I
yeah.
think these were like the nagging pieces that made Jon Connington feel familiar to our world's history. But like there's something that I think it forecasts, if these are um, the inspiration for
Mhm.
his for Connington's character. Like he doesn't typically write in just straight up allegory. He'll go at it from the side and give you um, the feeling or the vibes of that character, the themes, but not hit you with just um, like a retelling of the AIDS epidemic.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at some things about Jon Connington, it does look maybe he is going into that time period with a character that already seems to well men from his age who also dealt with this.
Yeah.
So I think we've got the grayscale epidemic to look forward to for that, you know?
Further tragedy.
Further tragedy.
Oh boy.
So if we're looking at forecasting of Jon Connington as somewhat of an allegory of George's own time in the military,
Mm-hmm.
queer men,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
we might see grayscale take a major role in the story moving forward, and we might see Jon take blame for this sickness, even if he's not the one to spread it. Because like we've seen him, he is trying to care for it. He didn't chop his hand off. He didn't do the most extreme things to keep everybody safe, but he is doing some things to care for it. So maybe that's successful enough, keeping it covered and cleaning it every day with wine or vinegar. Maybe that's enough that he does not spread it, but maybe it comes from somewhere else.
Yeah.
And maybe people find out about his because he didn't chop it off, or because he's not, it's still growing and he's still trying in the hand. I think he might be the fate that blamed patient zero of an epidemic that came from left field.
Yeah, but may not actually be patient zero.
Right. Yeah. Just a blamed one.
I was thinking we were tossing around some crackpotty ideas over the last couple of days, and
Getting it in.
I was thinking about his hand. I mean, he is going to do. There is going to be some, some battle, some military exchanges. But what if his hand gets either somehow the grayscale gets revealed because he accidentally loses his glove or whatever? What if his hand gets cut off? So maybe he is saved, but then that also reveals the illness.
That would be so cool.
Also,
would it reveal the illness? I'm just seeing like pocketing the hand.
Like someone picks up the hand and they're like, "Ah, it's a stone." I like Sarah's. Yeah. So, I am also. We've been watching a lot of Star Wars lately, so I'm very fixated on hands being chopped off.
Okay.
So it's been on my mind. So I was like, what if Jon Connington lets it?
You're talking about Jon Connington while watching Star Wars, and you saw the hand get chopped off.
Yeah, like, hey,
I can fix everything.
It always comes back to A Song of Ice and Fire, even in Star Wars. So, yeah, I mean, how about grayscale? Let's, Jon Connington's tragedy continues with grayscale. Could he be a red herring? Is there, like, what's going on here? Or if he's the red herring, who's the real patient zero? Who could it be?
I think it's an unclean child.
Yeah, sad, huh? There is a very prominent person who suffered from grayscale. Was it gray? It was gray plague.
Hers was Shireen's was grayscale.
Was actually grayscale, but she was cured.
So I think the way it works is there's three forms. There's a grayscale, and then they mention its swifter cousin, and then they mention its mortal form, the gray plague. So it sounds like there's regular grayscale, and then there's the fast grayscale, the swifter cousin, and then there's the mortal form, the gray plague.
Okay.
But I could be wrong.
Yeah. Well, Shireen was cured, supposedly, but in a Jon chapter, Val says no. That doesn't happen. Ask any of their, their Woods wives will tell you that grayscale never goes away, and she's unclean, and Val won't go anywhere near Shireen, as far as I can tell. So, could Shireen be patient zero? A lot of people think that. I guess it depends if these characters ever come into each other's orbit, whether one could be blamed for the others. Um,
They have a lot of space between them for Dream's sickness to be blamed on Jon, so something would have to happen. Definitely.
yeah. I mean, it's 1,000 miles or something, I think they said. So
But how
they're
would it
definitely
happen?
far away. I don't know. I hate to mention the show again, but in the show, there was a time when like everybody from the South went north because that's what had to happen. So, I mean, it's conceivable that would be pretty far in the future. So, I'm willing
But
to just keep an
how
open
would
mind about
Shireen?
all this.
Shireen's it possible that maybe it could spread from if she's torched. I'm guessing. I would think.
uh, the Shireen Ash theory.
How could Shireen give people grayscale if it's dormant?
Hmm.
Um,
Oh,
I
so
mean, yeah, I would definitely think Ash.
is it like spores, like a very popular zombie series that's on TV
Mm,
now?
I would think maybe like that. Maybe also magic though, if it's the red
Yeah.
priestess that is chanting her spells, who doesn't always know what they're going to do when she does them, and then burns this child who has grayscale at the time.
Mhm.
But also, Val is part of a cult that burns their dead
Mm.
because of fear of the White Walkers. We didn't get any mention of what happens when you burn a grayscale stricken child. She just said if she had a child with grayscale, she would kill that child.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know if they burn their bodies afterwards, but if Shireen's magical red priest ashes could give an army grayscale or its more mortal form, the Great Plague,
Mhm.
that could not only travel pretty fast, it could also be the red god's answer, the gift that you were asking for. You needed something to help Stannis's men keep moving, keep
Aha.
fighting, even when all is lost. What
Turning them to
happens
stone.
when stone men are they get an arm chopped off, or they get stabbed, or they get
Mhm.
hit in the head? They just keep fighting. I don't even. Do they eat? Do
Do
they eat?
I I don't know, they seem actually like a stone version of the White Walker zombies, of the whites.
Right.
Um,
They don't feel
so
pain. It's said
yeah.
that's the sign that it's getting you. If you want
Well,
tinfoil, there it is.
there it is. Stannis's army turns into stone men.
Because
In a
you
nutshell.
asked for help, he gave it to you.
It's true. It's like that would be a classic be careful what you ask for, I guess, right?
That would be
So,
definitely magic without a hilt, sword without a hilt kind of thing.
uh-huh. Yeah, exactly. Which was also Val, by the way. So
Oh, there we go.
maybe we'll get back
I
to like
told you guys.
Val warned us about all of this.
Everything. Everything that woman has
Um,
said is true. You trust her and you protect her.
Probably. I I think that Val's yeah, I think she should be listened to. So yeah, I think it's pretty clear whatever happens, and we obviously don't have a very clear idea. We have a lot of ideas though. We're not sure what's going to happen, but we're very sure that grayscale is going to be very, very important to both John Connington's arc and Westeros in general. So, um, yeah, you we could go on. We could probably do an entire live stream about grayscale, but we
Yeah.
can talk the um, about the
The impregnable
plan
castle.
to take the impregnable castle. Yes,
The Eerie?
it's impregnable. It's used so many times for the Erie, and
Uh,
I
I was
I
just telling I was telling Gwen earlier that I I was using my Kindle when rereading the chapter, and it's what I read A Dance with Dragons on the first time. And so it has my stupid notes from when I first read it. And when it says impregnable castle, right next to it, it's just like all caps, exclamation points, the eerie. That's definitely where they're going next. I'm like, oh no, you should not have been on the stream. What are you doing? Don't worry, I've read it like 20 more times.
That's fine. It's easy to think when he says impregnable immediately about the Erie, because it's like it's pounded into your head that the Erie is impregnable, or at least Liza Aaron thinks it is. But actually, again, show stuff in House of the Dragon, they say it numerous times as well. So I mention that only to say that the writers on House of the Dragon have obviously noticed how many times George uses the word impregnable in Erie. However, Tyrion also thinks of Storm's End as being impregnable. So that's the one time it's not used about the Erie in the main series. I think is Tyrion thinking about Storm's End one time. Maester Yandel also calls Storm's End impregnable, but that's the World Book, and you know, wouldn't have been on your mind while you were reading A Dance with Dragons, for instance.
Definitely not.
So the impregnable castle is Storm's End. And of course, Jon has mentioned his friends in the Stormlands, which I think is something, I don't know if we have specific ideas of who those might be. I think it's just worth saying that it's going to be a lot easier for these potential friends who are maybe like former Targaryen loyalists who bent the knee to Robert. Remember after the battles in the early battles of of the rebellion, a number of those kind of southern lords who were Targaryen loyalists, Lord Fell and there's several of them whose names escape me at the moment. I'm sorry, but they were won over by Robert after he defeated them in battle. But I think it's probably, worth thinking about whether or not some of those houses whose lords are probably not around anymore, the ones from the rebellion, might feel more free to dissent now that Robert is dead. Like they might be like, yeah, you know what? I didn't really approve of Robert being so excited about the Lannisters killing Rhaegar's children and wife. That wasn't cool. So remembering, of course, that those lords bent their knees to Robert before any of that stuff happened. They thought probably that he was, an honorable lord fighting for whatever, freedom fighter. And then,
you heard the story about Rhaegar.
Yeah.
So they would think that he's just in his pursuit. And I think you're right. Like right at the beginning of the chapter, they tell us how they were loyal to Robert and they were loyal to Renly, but Stannis is no Robert and Stannis is no Renly, and people are not loyal to him. So it's kind of his chance. Go meet with your old friends, the people who like maybe Robert was above you, like you're above Stannis, so let's move in.
Like ranked choice voting.
You don't need to like me best, but like me better than him.
Right, exactly. So, yes, definitely. It seems like he fully expects to have friends in the Stormlands, and add those to the friends in the Reach. That the Peak first name I can't remember. The Peak who's in the Golden Company talks about the friends in the Reach. So they're gathering a lot of they're gathering people from the south. Yes, begins with an L.
Friends in the Reach, friends in the Stormlands, the in-laws in Dorne. Let's do this.
That's basically the whole south. What does that leave the Lannisters with? I mean, they're
Not the North.
they're no longer friends with
Not
the
the Vale.
Tyrells. So the Lannisters
Not the Reach.
the West, I guess. They've got a pretty weak hold on all the rest of the place, the Riverlands and the North, and even the Crown Lands. I think is getting a little sick of Cersei's antics. So, yeah, I think they could potentially, if they get Dorne on side. Dorne has 2 massive armies waiting in the mountain passes, waiting for what? Jon Connington doesn't know. We know because we know about Quentin and that whole storyline. So, but
Waiting for dragons.
exactly. However, once Toran finds out, he's someone who's going to very easily pivot, and we already know from the Winds of Winter that he's sent Arianne to meet with Jon Connington and Aegon, of course, and evaluate whether he's real or whether he's feigned. And yeah, I kind of feel like Jon's plans to save Aegon for Daenerys are going to go down the toilet once Aegon meets Arianne. What do you think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, probably. Especially if he gets to start making a decision. And if you've talked about it before, if Storm's End if his leading the charge into Storm's End is just him at the head of the army, but not really in charge of anything, then he might continue to get annoyed that he's not actually in charge.
More trying to assert
start making some decisions.
Yeah.
And one decision that might be easy to make is there's this beautiful woman in front of me, and I think I'm going to choose her because that's kind of my decision in the end. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to choose what you want because you haven't let me choose anything so far.
Yeah.
I'm going to be brat about it.
Beautiful woman with the 10,000 or 20,000 Dorne spearmen. So, I mean, it would make sense other than the fact that they were trying to kind of hold out for Dany's dragons, but yeah, so yeah.
I think we're going to get one more thing though there, because it seems like when George wants us to question a Targaryen, like truly question, they say the line about, I can take more than one spouse. That's what Aegon did, or that's what Maegor did.
Yeah.
And I mean, it seems like a situation where he's ripe to say it.
Yeah, I agree.
And then we're going to be like, all right, you're officially a bad guy now, buddy. If I think that's the kicked puppy kind of way of being like, this Targaryen's not great, It's like they don't care enough about their significant other to just be with their significant other, I guess. Or they discount their significant other in that moment and say, I could take another. I could get with more wives or more husbands.
Well, yeah. So if he makes his decision, and Jon Connington says, you're waiting for Daenerys, you fool, and he can say, fine, I'll marry Daenerys too, right? Like, I don't care.
Like he's going to give us that.
Targaryen. I can do whatever I want. He definitely seems to be going down the I can do whatever I want path. So, how do you think they're going to take Storm's End? Are they going to do the same thing that Davos did, or is that boring because Davos has already done it twice? Are
probably
they
boring.
Have other guile? Yeah, like probably won't do that a third time. But what other guile could there be? Are they going to roll up and be like, yo, Stannis's guys, we're the sellswords Stannis hired. Let us in.
maybe his friends in the Stormlands, some of them are inside that castle and can do just that for him or help facilitate that anyway.
Yes.
But why they mentioned this bolt hole in the in Griffin's Roost, and then they mentioned the bolt holes in all of the Stony Sept in the same chapter, and it's like, is George trying to tell us, like, is there a bolt hole coming that we're gonna, like, we gotta see one used? You just keep mentioning them.
Yeah.
You just started mentioning them, and now you keep doing it. Mm-hmm. Use it. There's lots of ways. I think you forecasted that the You have the Golden Company way. Was there another one?
Um,
Just another trickery way.
yeah, I
But that
think.
might have just been Davos's
Yeah,
back
I
in this.
mean, that's the one. That's the only one I can think of at the moment, and I did not go back to our. We did the when we did the Winds of Winter live stream series. We talked about this in one of those. Um, and yeah, I mean, I don't think it's going to be a big battle though, which is what I think Aegon is expecting to lead the charge. So I think that to what you were saying earlier, and he's not going to be
If
happy because
it's
they're going to get there and there's going to be just trickery, and I don't think he likes that. Remember tossing the Syvass table when Tyrion tricked him.
he
So
doesn't like this guile. Whoever
I
this
don't think he
guile
likes
is, I'm
Guile. I
not a
think he
fan.
wants just brute force. So yeah, I think that could lead to him being somewhat rebellious.
Yes, I haven't thought about it before, but it's gonna be a no to you leading into Storm's End, right? It's got to be a no because you can't have the Targaryen at the front of that if you're trying to trick them.
Yeah.
And it sounds like they're trying to trick them.
Yeah, exactly. So I want to thank Sir Tony Slag for the super chat, and he says the problem seems to be the actually we can put it right on here. Look at that technology. Problem seems to be the rebranding of the Golden Company because the hate for this force could unite Lannisters and Starks, Dany, and whoever. So yeah, being backed by the Golden Company and just in general is problematic because of the history with the Blackfires. So across Westeros, once they hear that the Golden Company has arrived and that they've got this Targaryen with them, I don't think it's going to be a big stretch for uh, people all around Westeros to start wondering if this kid is who he says he is, or if he's just another, rinse and repeat Golden Company, Blackfire, or what have you. You know, another effort by the
Another
Golden Company
Blackfire
to
pretender.
put their chosen candidate on the throne of Westeros, which, yes, could unite some unexpected people against this invasion by foreigners. I mean, it's always Danny's going to face the same problem basically if she shows up with Dothraki. Uh, I just think that the mainland Westerosi are not going to be too thrilled at these foreign invaders, no matter who they're accompanying. So
Neither of them. I guess maybe if they had to choose, they're probably choosing their own kind. They're choosing the people who are pretending to be them anyway. Even if they can, like trick them into thinking that they're actually Peaks and Muds and Coles and whatever's. Like that'll probably look better than complete foreigners to Westerosi people.
Yes, for sure.
People that used to live here rather than people who never lived here. That's definitely going to be.
And everybody, a lot of them seem to have that. So I think if they put those people front and center, Raleigh Duckfield, who's he's a bastard from the Reach. So, there's a lot of them like that they could put those people front and center and maybe hold Lyson Omar kind of off to the side. the real people who are obviously foreigners, in quotes. But this chat about Aegon brings me to our next bullet point, our next discussion topic. Aegon the Sixth. Is he real? I mean, it's very silly because, of course, he's real. He's a real person, and
he's a robot.
He's named. He's a real person, a real boy, like Peter, named Aegon. So, but is he really Rhaegar's son? I mean, I think it's pretty clear that he is has Targaryen blood. But
I think if he were a Targaryen or if he were the kid from Pisswater Bend, it would feel like wasted pages, I think. It feels like he has to be Blackfire at this point, right? Through
yeah,
like the
because
little allusions, through the Golden Company being there. We've got the clanking dragon washing back up. Like I'd rather like I'd like to see maybe a bright flame descendant, but I think all conversations are kind of closed at this point. There's so much Blackfire stuff that he has to be, I think.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's got to be a reason why, midway through the series, George started, mentioned the Blackfires for the first time, and then um, started writing the Dunk and Egg stories. And, well, the first one doesn't really talk about it. It's in the Sword that you get all the Blackfire, and so backstory, and then, of course, Mystery Night. And if
Is
you look
he
at where that lines
timing
up on the
wise?
timeline, yeah, it's all happening at the same time. It's like he was just like, oh my god, I have the story I need to tell, and I need to give a lot of backstory to it, so I'll write it into these short stories. Um, so yeah, it's important for some reason. So
Yeah,
what's that reason? And now you have
it
this
has to
boy.
be this.
I mean, it just seems pretty. There's a lot more to it than that. We have an entire 2+ hour episode all about Aegon and the whole Blackfire conspiracy. So
There's many episodes.
we could, yes, many people have done. Or it just goes. It's a
You've done a
fascinating
few.
topic, and there's a lot more to say about it than we could say here in just a few minutes. But the evidence is there, and no matter how you think he got it, whether it came through um, Illyrio or um, you know some other way.
That's the part I wonder about the most. Like, is it Sarah? Is it Illyrio? Is
Mm,
he related to Varys? Like, is it?
right.
But it all of the forecasting, it just feels like what would all of that have meant if he's anything but Blackfire?
Right. Yeah. If this is really just Aegon's long lost son, why?
Right.
Why did we?
Wouldn't really make
What's the
sense.
point of all the other story?
Do you think he gets found out?
Uh, how would that work? That's the interesting thing. Um, I also strongly suspect that he's going to have Blackfire because I think the sword, that they had the sword. So
Right.
I think if he shows up with the sword, it might be one of those things where maybe in um, think about point of views like people. You might not get full confirmation because who would know this? Illyrio and Varys, they don't have points of view unless they're given one, or you see them talking to someone maybe and admit to it. But you could certainly see a lot of other people wondering
Thinking it.
and voicing the suspicion or thinking it in their heads, especially if he shows up with that sword. I mean, that to me is it sort of like a that would be the smoking gun that this kid is a
I think it
Blackfire.
looks like it. I think there's one other Targaryen DNA test though, and they just reappeared in the world.
Oh,
And one of
yeah.
them said, "Quentin, I'm sorry, you are not the son, or you are not the descendant."
Mhm.
Um, I kind of think like that's got to be it. If Danny is gonna slay the lies, I don't think she's just
Yeah.
slaying the guy that's lying. I think she's
Yeah.
she's telling the truth about it.
Right.
And I think the like I want to see him ride a dragon. I would love to see that. And three heads of the dragon. Are we going to see a second and third rider? But I think if we're talking about her slaying lies, I think there's one Targaryen DNA test,
Mm.
and it's a dragon.
Yeah. Do you
And
think he fails? Does he fail because he's
I think like even if like Daenerys has the dragon eat him or something,
Mm-hmm.
dragon judgment feels like one way of how
Yeah.
you would be like. I think she would hate it. I think she's going to be like struggling with what the
Mm.
hell's going on when other Targaryens start showing up.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, she's gotten used to
Dany,
being the only one, which,
right?
in a way, she longs for family.
Yeah,
Well, she had a shitty family. She, her one brother that she knew
she
was
still wants them.
not good, but
She
she
heard
still
some
wants
of them were
family.
cool.
Yeah, I mean, she wanted her older brother, the older, not the middle older. Um, so then you'll have this kid show up and claiming to be Rhaegar's son, and initially she might be quite taken with that idea. But if he's this sort of, his attitude, I don't need my aunt, and this sort of like, I don't know. I feel like they will clash in a strong way, and especially if he starts to act like he's got the right to one of her dragons, that could be
Yeah.
problematic. But
Hmm.
also, what does this do to her um, once Jon comes into the picture, and if she, if Jon's true parentage becomes known, now if she's already got this other, um, if Aegon does turn out to be a feigned boy, not really Rhaegar's son, and she finds out,
I
and
think the reverse.
then she
The
meets
re-
Jon. I mean, is she gonna now just be like, "Oh my god,"
I think it's the exact reverse. I think
Yeah.
she's like, I don't believe you. I don't
Mhm.
trust you. And then the dragon DNA test says, I do. And she's like, oh,
Okay.
fuck. Excuse my language. This is not Sanri Scribbles.
It's okay. This is not a show for children. Yeah, yeah. So the dragons choose. They choose
it,
the.
it feels right
Yeah.
that if they say no to one but yes to the other, she's supposed to be slaying the lie. And she's going to need convincing about Jon after she meets somebody who's lying or at least wrong about who he says he
Mhm.
is.
Yeah. Yeah. I just think it's gonna be, it's gonna complicate matters for Jon. Not that Jon is really gonna be all that interested in making everyone believe in him, because I'm not sure how he's gonna even handle this information. But
What are we talking about? Jon's dead.
yeah. Oh, right. That's right. He died. Right. Sorry, I have no knowledge of Jon being still alive, so just my assumption.
Oh no.
Uh, yeah. So I guess, yeah, we got, um oh, we already talked about Ariane, so that was, I definitely think, that pretty much covers, Aegon the Sixth, who is, probably Targaryen blood, but probably not
I mean,
exactly
I
who
would,
he's claiming to be.
yeah. It, what do you think about the three heads of the dragon?
Um,
Is there three riders? Or is she gonna have two at her side when she ends this?
mm,
Is she, is she the center dragon?
yeah, I mean, it could be, yeah. The Definitely. I mean, it wouldn't mimic the original, because there's only one female and two
It could
males.
mirror it though.
Could be. Could be like an
Reverse
inversion.
it, yeah.
Yeah. Uh, so that's for sure. I mean, there's a lot of other options if you're, crackpotting. There's the Tyrion option, and then there's the Brown Van Plum option for people who might ride dragons or be somehow involved in the distribution of dragons. um, Failing to ride dragons, I don't know. So
Anyone with silver hair would be a candidate.
pretty much, yeah. I mean, for God's sakes, Ariane is just as much of a descendant of Targaryens as her brother Quentyn was.
Yeah.
I don't really
Don't try
quite
it.
see that. I wouldn't recommend it to her, but she's got just as much chance as he ever did. And
I would
he
love
did, I was reading recently, Quentin did seem to be making inroads with one of the dragons. I think with Viserion or Rhaego, which is the one that killed
it.
him.
One of them was hanging from the ceiling like a creep, right? And then
The
went
one
down.
the one that killed him was obviously the one that killed him, but the other one, he sort of, almost seemed like that one was going to kneel down to him. He yelled at it and it sort of like paused and kind of looked at him, but then the other one came in out of nowhere and fried him. So,
Close, buddy.
dragons are scary.
Yeah, I would think so.
Bless anyone who thinks they want to have anything to do with trying to ride a dragon or talk to a dragon.
I would rather
train a dragon. I know.
Maybe from an egg, it'd be the best.
Yes.
You raise that thing from this big. Hell yeah.
This the idea of a full grown dragon, or even a juvenile dragon, which is the size of a cart horse. They've sound
got
very
big
appealing
teeth.
to me. I'd rather not. Like, what's the payoff? I guess it's a big payoff.
And the ones that are the size of like football fields. What about them?
Yeah, probably stay right away from that one. Give me a nice little dragon egg. Yeah.
She's cannibal around with a dragon egg. We'd love it.
Boy. Yeah. So, this is probably where Aegon is. We don't really know where it's going. We're sure that he's gonna, on some level, be revealed as maybe not who he, or maybe not believed. But he also might, have a period where people do believe him, or at least where he's parking his royal behind on the Iron Throne. So maybe that's where Dany finds him.
You're not supposed to be there.
That would be annoying. So,
do you think there's any chance of it happening the way Tyrion lured Aegon into doing it? Do you think he's going to be set on all sides by enemies, and she comes in to rescue, or do you think he's just going to blow through this with guile, whoever that guy is, and get that Iron Throne?
Yeah, I think that what I said, that the him getting to the Iron Throne, and then him getting to King's Landing, and that's where Dany finds him, because I think that's possibly the worst case scenario for them meeting is he's already taken the throne and she's sort of like an afterthought.
Yeah. If she found him in the field, like there's a conversation to be had before anybody even sees that stupid chair. But if he gets to that throne quickly while she's still off in Marine, like she's going to find him an enemy. There's zero chance after that.
Yeah, exactly. Which actually, I found that you mentioned Tyrion, and then we were talking about dragons, of course, and I think there's something interesting here. We actually kind of touched on this earlier. You've got Aegon and the Golden Company, who are going to be probably poorly received in Westeros for all the reasons we said. What is the main feature of the Golden Company that homeless Harry Strickland is always obsessing about? Is their elephants. And lo and behold, at the end of this chapter, there's a couple elephants that show up. Finally. Poor Harry Strickland. It's just been beside himself that his elephants were lost, but they finally got a couple. So let's talk about the elephants, because there's a parallel here with Dany and the Dothraki, like we talked about a little while ago, And then she's got dragons. So Aegon's got Golden Company and elephants. Dany's got the Dothraki and dragons. In that Tyrion chapter, where they're playing Savas, which we mentioned earlier, where Aegon gets ticked off at the end because Tyrion tricked him and throws the board across the room. What we learn in that chapter is that a dragon can remove elephants from the board. So I think if you look at Savas and the mechanics of Savas,
he's gonna flame some elephants.
You have a pretty maybe metaphorical dragons and elephants. I don't know. Maybe the dragons will indeed eat the elephants. That would be cool.
That sounds right. And also that's a pretty big food source for such large creatures. Like when you're coming to invade a country and you're like, well, what are they going to eat? Whatever they want. That's not maybe not the best plan to come in on. Look at all these elephants that don't belong here.
Happen to have elephants. And he happens to have 3 elephants, by the way. The chapter opens with homeless Harry Strickland saying that there are no elephants, and where are my elephants? And they're lost, and he's bemoaning that. And then at the end, when Aegon shows up, he's got 3 elephants in tow. We actually don't know where those elephants came from because they lay out where all the boats are. Aegon was on a boat with them. They had just left him behind at their camp. So
some of the boats not land yet.
But they find out that one of them landed on Greenstone, and then there were still 3 missing boats. But they never say, "Oh, hey, one of those 3 boats was found and landed on the Stormlands." They just say, "We found some elephants."
They just keep popping up without the information of why anybody's there. So it kind of makes a good. I think you've mentioned that it's like a good bookmark of like what's going on because everybody's going to notice elephants. Everybody's going to notice dragons. That's when you're going to tell when everybody's invading. Is the small folk can see this.
All of a sudden, we got 3 elephants wandering around the storm. I can't wait till Arianne sees the elephants. That'll be pretty cool. I assume they took them to Storm's End. Maybe that's part of the guile. Maybe the elephants play a role in taking Storm's End. I don't know. Like, hey, we're a circus. We brought you. I don't know.
Hey, we brought you elephants. Don't look inside the big wooden one. There's definitely not soldiers inside it.
Actually, 4 elephants. They are our gift to you. Actually, we did talk about that. Not the elephants, but we did talk about in our live stream, in our Winds of Winter live stream. I just remembered we did talk about a Trojan horse scenario where maybe it doesn't have to be like the whole army, but like a person gets somehow
Uhtred your way in there.
Yeah, exactly.
Let them flood in.
Love it. So, I think, the other thing that George introduces around, is, well, he introduces this earlier, but is Savas. And I think we can learn a lot about what George expects the mechanics of our future conflicts to be by looking at Tyrion playing Savas. Because he plays Savas with Varys, right? And with Aegon. So.
And one more. When he is enslaved.
Yeah, he plays with that guy, and
he gets his lesson in humility.
Yeah, right.
Very sufficient for information, and that's when he slips the Griffin gang. Not really. He gets taken.
Kidnapped. Okay. Oh, Tyrion. But he'll be back. He'll be with Dany, and now he'll be with Dany and her 3 dragons instead of Aegon and his 3 elephants. So I guess we kind of talked about this a little bit before, but where do we think Jon Connington's arc is ultimately going to take him? Like, we have ideas about the short term, Storm's End, and maybe even a King's Landing, but what's the real tragedy of Jon Connington? Is there success in his future, or is it just more failure, which is the failure is the thing that's been driving his arc uh, since Robert's Rebellion?
I think we talked about what if he lived?
Yeah. What if
That
he
would
lived?
suck.
Yeah.
That would be awful. And if
Hmm.
there's grayscale spreading, I would think that if it's going to be like a nationwide thing where it's getting beyond just a couple of people have it, there might be sorrows like encampments where people are quarantined or something like that. I think Jon Connington living at the end of this to continue thinking about another failure that's now on top of the whole failure that started it all, and if he knows that they tricked him,
Yeah.
that they were lying the whole time, that this
Yeah.
was not Rhaegar's son,
That he's been played this whole time.
and then he just has to go off and finish the grayscale life.
Sad Jon
Mm.
Connington. Or
I
let
would
me
hate
say,
it.
staring out the window of
Oh yeah,
they're standing on the tower, the tallest tower at Griffin's Roost, staring into the distance,
turning
into a stone man, thinking about his silver prince.
like the stone griffins on Dragonstone.
Exactly. What if he finds out or meets Rhaegar's actual real son and finds out after all, like the war, like, I think it's probably rational to, given the way like that things are going to fall outside of Dany, to see this war becoming very much more of a North versus South thing, because it seems like Aegon's going to get a lot of the South on his side, and not that Jon is going to be necessarily, fighting as the other Targaryen, but I mean, I think they could be fighting against the Northerners. So what if after all that happens and whatever tragedy befalls Aegon,
Jon meets Jon.
meets Jon and realizes also the possible misconception that could arise from Rhaegar's actual real son being named Jon.
He did love me.
Oh, he loved
Jon,
me.
stop
Like,
it.
what if that's like his final fade to black?
Yeah, except wait, are we still projecting a Targaryen name and Jon is just a cover?
Yes.
Who knows?
Well, we know
Who
that,
knows?
but I mean, he might not know that Jon was named by Ned. He might just hear.
Let him have it. Just let him have it. He's gonna go die in Griffin's Roost.
Thinking that at least, if nothing else, the only thing that has been successful or happy about my long, sad life of failure and tragedy is that my silver prince named his son after me.
He at least had some respect for me.
Yeah. But that it's actually not even right. So that's the tragic end.
Name's Aegon.
That would be a very tragic end.
There's also a chance that if he knew about Jon or met Jon, that he would just hate him because of all this. Are you going to believe it again? Right. Are you going to believe it again?
But maybe that's the one thing that makes him think, huh.
There's that DNA test.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah, he's named Jon after me. And he's got a dragon. Dany seems to like him. Like, oh, man. Just talk about backing the wrong horse. So I think that's however it happens, or he finds out that the tragedy of Jon Connington, besides the lifetime of failure and exile and now grayscale, is going to be the and probably one way or the other, I feel like he's going to lose this son. I think there's a parallel with him and Dora Martell, because they're both these sort of like long game players hiding in the shadows.
Doomed.
Yep. Doran loses his son to a dragon. Well, if Aegon is killed by a dragon, or even by Dany, or that metaphorical type of dragon, it still works. And which will be, I think, pretty ironic, since the vengeance arc of both of these men Connington and Dora Martell is all about the Lannisters. So they end up losing their sons
Yeah.
to Targaryen dragons. I think that's
Time
some
to
irony
find
right there.
poetry in that.
Yeah, it is. So yeah, I think that the tragedy of Jon Connington is
Do you
just.
think he has a different death?
Do I think
Think
who?
there's any kind of death forecasted for him? Grayscale's it's a long one.
Yeah,
It's not necessary that he would die from that while the
right.
story's still going
It
on.
would be hard to see that, um, like to show that in the story. Good Lord, this story is so complicated already. I don't know how we could, forecast out the years that it would take someone to die from
5
grayscale.
years. Some stonemen get 10.
Yeah. So
That's what he said.
yeah. So that's potentially quite a long time in terms of the way we think things should be ramping up in this story. So,
10-year gap.
I mean, to be fair, Jon Connington has had grayscale for 15 years now. So it's amazing he's still alive. Let's face it.
Is he?
We don't even know. We don't even know. Yes, we do, because we have the Arian sample chapters.
George,
so.
help.
Come on, help us. Yeah. Yeah, well, I guess that's it. He's a tragic character, and amongst a whole cast of tragic characters, I think he's probably one of the most, because he doesn't really seem to ever get any redeeming moments. Although, I guess if they have a bit of success along the way, maybe that's enough to soften it.
Seemed like he has something good going
on. Something go.
He got Griffin's Roost back.
Yep, he did, and that seemed to make him very happy. So did we really talk about why you picked this chapter? Because that's usually my last question.
Mostly wanted to talk about Jon Connington.
Okay.
I think there's I love Lemore, which I lied. We didn't talk about Lemore.
We didn't talk about Lemore. Sorry.
Aegon, everybody on the boat. Big fan of the new characters, but it was once like things started rolling with Jon Connington, and who I think George is inspired by in his writing of Jon Connington. I think I've just been steadily thinking about it for a couple of years now. So I definitely wanted to talk to you about it and pick your brain about it. And these are, like I said, it could have been either. There's only 2 of them. Either of Jon's chapters. But I really I can't stop thinking about Jon, even though he annoys me.
Well, it's a good chapter because there's a lot going on. There's the backstory from the rebellion. There's the Rhaegar stuff, and there's the grayscale stuff, and the Blackfire stuff, and this, whatever their arc is going forward.
So much going on.
As another claimant to the Iron Throne, which George has said there will be several. So
spoilers fun.
Yeah,
it would be boring if we just walked to the end with our favorites.
That's right. So, we gotta pay the price. So good things, bad things, tragic things, very little happiness, but we hold out hope.
Maybe a little bit.
Maybe something happy.
Aegon's about to meet Arianne. There's going to be some happiness.
There we go. Maybe they'll
however
be
short it is.
Yeah, you gotta hang on to those moments because they're few and far between. So that's great. I think it was a great chapter. Thank you.
Yeah, this was fun.
Yeah, thanks a lot for being here, and thank you to people who are watching.
Love you, chat.
Love you guys. Thank you very much for being here. And also if you're listening or watching to the pre-recorded version, we very much appreciate you.
We love you too.
Yes, exactly. We love that you choose to spend your time with us. So thank you. And thank you, Egg. Anything you have going on that you wish to talk about? I know we talked about Sanri Scribbles. which is looking for this thing again.
There it is.
There it is. You guys are Wednesdays and Sundays
Sundays
on Twitch,
at 7 p.m. Eastern.
and there's your. We can find you on Blue Sky at Hexagon, which is very clever.
that was not my idea. That was somebody else came up with it.
That's very well. It's a good one. Take credit for it. But I think you also you help manage, or you do Sanri Scribbles on Blue Sky as well. So yes, so definitely give them a follow.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I love you, buddy. This was a lot of fun.
I'm glad you were here. This was fun. This was a good chapter for us to talk about.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
It's funny because doing this project, now this is the fourth one, every guest has brought the chapter that I would be the chapter, like if I really had to think about it, the perfect
that you would pick for them?
Yeah.
Yes.
So far, we're 4 for 4.
Let's see if Sanri can do it in 2 months.
Pressure's on Sanri. I actually know, and I'm about to tell you. Next up for Radio Westeros, we're in the middle of covering Bran's arc, so we've got Bran 2 coming up next, probably in June, and then in July I will be back with another Lady Gwyn and Friends live stream, and like I said, I will be joined by Samrixian, who I think we can call her the mother of Drogon. And so guess what she's going to bring to talk about? What else would you expect for someone with such a title? Danny Tan in a Game of Thrones. So yes, that is the one. And I also so really looking forward to that, because the Birth of the Dragons is going to be perfect for her. Thank you to Emily the Eerie and Sir Tony Sled as well for the super chats.
Love you guys.
We appreciate you very, very much. So, and to all of our patrons, once again, thank you. We couldn't do this without you. There is our Patreon, and if you would like to join us there, please do. And we are also on Blue Sky, if I can find us. We're at radiowesteros.com on Blue Sky. And so give us a follow. Thank you all so much for being here. Don't forget to like and subscribe, because that helps us a lot. And we will see you all again soon with another Lady Gwyn and Friends. Bye for now.
Bye.